Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Colony Administration Building and watched the morning sun rise over the golden wheat fields of New Haven Colony. The sight never got old even after 12 years of serving as colony administrator. Rolling hills stretched to the horizon covered in crops that would feed millions of people across human space. Children played in the nearby parks while their parents worked in the processing facilities and research labs that dotted the landscape. New Haven was everything humanity hoped to achieve among the stars. A peaceful world where families could build better lives far from the crowded cities of Earth. The colony housed 2.8 million people who had traveled here seeking opportunity and freedom. They were farmers and scientists and teachers and engineers who believed in humanity's future among the stars. Dr. Lisa Carter rushed into Jake's office that morning with worry written across her face. She carried a data pad showing energy readings that made no sense. Lisa ran the colony's science division and rarely showed concern about anything. Her calm demeanor had helped the colony through meteor showers and solar flares and equipment failures over the years. "Jake, we have a problem," Lisa said as she set the data pad on his desk. "Long-range sensors are picking up massive energy signatures approaching our system. The readings don't match any known human ship designs or natural phenomena." Jake studied the data and felt his stomach drop. 12 contacts were moving toward New Haven at incredible speed. Each energy signature was larger than Earth's biggest battleships. The objects would reach their system in less than 6 hours. Could they be from one of the other colonies, Jake asked, even though he already knew the answer. No human settlement had ships this large. The energy readings suggested technology far beyond anything in human space. "I've checked with every colony and research station within 50 light years," Lisa replied. "None of them have vessels in this area. These contacts appeared from nowhere about an hour ago. They're definitely not human." Jake activated the colony's emergency communication system and sent messages to Earth and the nearest military outpost. New Haven had only basic defensive systems designed to handle pirates or equipment malfunctions. They were farmers and scientists, not soldiers. The colony had never needed heavy weapons because this sector of space was considered safe. Amy Rodriguez arrived at the administration building within minutes of Jake's emergency call. She served as the colony's chief communications officer and had maintained contact with human space for 8 years. Amy had family on Earth and knew how important it was to keep the communication lines open. "I've sent priority messages to Earth Command and the patrol station at Alpha Centauri," Amy reported. "Earth Command acknowledges receipt, but their nearest ships are 3 weeks away. The patrol station has 2 light cruisers, but they're responding to a distress call in the opposite direction." Jake nodded and tried to stay calm for the sake of his people. Colony administrators were trained to handle emergencies, but this situation was beyond anything in the manual. First contact with alien species was supposed to happen through diplomatic channels, not with unknown vessels, approaching a civilian colony at high speed. The alien ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Haven system exactly 6 hours after Lisa's initial detection. Jake and his senior staff watched from the colony command center as the vessels appeared on their screens. The ships were massive and angular with dark hulls that seemed to absorb light. Each vessel was over 2 kilometers long and bristling with weapon systems. "My God," Lisa whispered as she studied the tactical display. "Those aren't exploration ships. They're built for war." Jake opened communication channels and broadcast on all frequencies. "Unknown vessels, this is Jake Morrison, administrator of New Haven Colony. You are approaching a peaceful human settlement. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." The response came 30 minutes later in perfect English. The voice was cold and mechanical with no trace of emotion. "Human colony, you will evacuate this system immediately. This space now belongs to the Keth Dominion. You have 6 hours to comply." "We are civilians with families and homes here," Jake replied. "We've done nothing wrong. This is our world and we've lived here peacefully for 15 years. We're willing to discuss territorial boundaries through proper diplomatic channels." "There will be no discussion," the alien voice responded. "Lesser species do not negotiate with the Keth. You will leave or you will die." Jake felt the blood drain from his face as the alien ships began moving toward New Haven. The vessels maintained perfect formation as they approached the planet. Their weapon systems came online and target locks appeared on every major population center. "Amy, get me a priority channel to Earth," Jake ordered. "Full data burst transmission. Send everything we have on these ships, including tactical scans, weapon configurations, and communication records." Amy's fingers flew over her console as she compiled the data package. The information could help human military forces understand the alien threat, even if New Haven couldn't be saved. She included detailed sensor readings of the Keth weapons and ship designs along with recordings of their communications. The first alien attack came without warning. Energy beams lanced down from orbit and struck the colony's defensive installations. The shields lasted only seconds before collapsing under the overwhelming firepower. Jake watched in horror as the colony's small fleet of civilian transports tried to escape, only to be destroyed before they could reach hyperspace. "Transmission ready," Amy announced as explosions rocked the command center. "Full tactical analysis and communication logs uploading to Earth now." Jake grabbed the microphone for what he knew would be his final message to human space. "This is Jake Morrison, New Haven Colony under attack by hostile alien force calling themselves the Keth Dominion. They gave no warning and refused all attempts at peaceful contact. These are not explorers or traders. They are killers who see us as inferior species. They have superior technology and overwhelming firepower. New Haven cannot be saved, but maybe our sacrifice can help humanity prepare for what's coming." The alien bombardment intensified as energy beams carved through the colony's buildings. Families ran for shelter that wouldn't protect them from orbital weapons. The wheat fields that Jake had watched grow for 12 years burned under the alien assault. Children cried for parents who would never hold them again. "Transmission complete," Amy reported as the building shook from nearby explosions. "Earth has received all our data." Jake nodded and looked out at his dying colony one last time. The people of New Haven had come here seeking peace among the stars. They had built something beautiful and pure that represented the best of humanity. Now it was being destroyed by creatures who saw no value in human life. The command center's roof collapsed as Jake Morrison's final transmission ended. New Haven Colony died that day along with 2.8 million innocent people. But their sacrifice had sent humanity a warning that would change the course of galactic history. The Keth Dominion had just made the worst mistake in their species' existence. They had shown humanity exactly what they were capable of doing. President Helen Baker stared at the holographic display showing the smoking ruins of New Haven Colony and felt something cold settle in her chest. The images had arrived at Earth 3 days ago along with Jake Morrison's final transmission and complete tactical data on the alien attackers. Nearly 3 million human lives had been snuffed out, without warning or mercy by creatures calling themselves the Keth Dominion. The emergency session of the Terran Defense Council had been running for 18 hours straight as military leaders and government officials tried to process what they were seeing. The conference room deep beneath the Pentagon was filled with the most powerful people in human space, all struggling to understand how their peaceful expansion among the stars had led to this moment. Admiral Frank Nelson stood at the head of the massive table and cleared his throat for attention. As Supreme Commander of Earth's combined fleet, he had spent 30 years preparing for threats that might emerge from the darkness between stars. Frank had always believed that humanity would eventually encounter hostile aliens, but he had hoped it would happen through diplomatic channels, not the massacre of innocents. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have confirmed that New Haven Colony has been completely destroyed," Frank announced in his gravelly voice. "Orbital bombardment reduced the entire planet to ash and molten rock. No survivors have been detected by our long-range sensors. The aliens left behind a message beacon, warning humanity to abandon this sector of space or face similar consequences." The room erupted in angry voices as council members demanded immediate military action. Some called for diplomatic contact with other alien species, while others insisted that humanity should evacuate the outer colonies to avoid further attacks. Helen raised her hand for silence and the voices gradually faded away. "What are our military options, Admiral?" Helen asked, even though she suspected she already knew the answer. Earth's official fleet consisted of fewer than 200 ships spread across dozens of star systems. The vessels were designed for patrol duties and pirate suppression, not full-scale warfare against technologically superior enemies. Frank activated another holographic display showing Earth's known military assets. The numbers looked pathetic compared to the 12 massive warships that had destroyed New Haven. Human civilization appeared, defenseless against an enemy that viewed them as inferior, beings worthy only of extermination. "Our conventional forces are insufficient for this threat," Frank admitted. "The Keth ships demonstrated weapons technology beyond our current capabilities. Their energy weapons cut through New Haven's shields like they weren't there. A direct confrontation with our existing fleet would result in our complete destruction. General Kate Thompson stood up from her seat near the back of the room and walked toward the holographic display. Kate had served as head of military special projects for 15 years and rarely spoke during these meetings. Her presence usually meant that classified information was about to be revealed to people who thought they knew everything about human military capabilities. That assessment would be correct if we were limited to conventional forces, Kate said as she activated her security clearance on the display system. However, the situation is not as hopeless as it appears. For the past 40 years, humanity has been preparing for exactly this scenario. The holographic display changed to show something that made every person in the room gasp in shock. Dozens of hidden military installations appeared scattered throughout human space. Asteroid bases and deep space shipyards that had been operating in complete secrecy for decades. The scale of construction was staggering and completely unknown to most of the people in the room. Project Leviathan was initiated in 2387 after our first contact, with the Centauri Republic revealed that the galaxy was filled with species possessing advanced military technology, Kate continued. We realized that humanity's peaceful nature might be seen as weakness by hostile aliens. The project was designed to ensure that any species attempting to threaten human civilians would face overwhelming retaliation. Dr. Pete Walsh joined Kate at the display and began highlighting different sections of the hidden infrastructure. Pete ran the Military Research Division and had been working on advanced weapon systems that pushed the boundaries of known physics. His work had been classified at levels so high that even most government officials were unaware of its existence. The shipyards have been producing vessels continuously for 40 years, Pete explained. We currently have 700,000 warships of various classes in standby mode throughout human space. The ships were designed using data from every alien encounter and theoretical threat analysis. They represent technology decades ahead of what any known species possesses. Helen felt her heart rate increase as she processed what she was hearing. Humanity had been secretly building the largest military force in galactic history while maintaining the appearance of peaceful farmers and explorers. The resources required for such an undertaking must have been enormous. How is this possible? Demanded Senator Bill Harris from the Appropriations Committee. The funding alone would require trillions of credits. Where did the money come from, and how was this kept secret from Congress? The project was funded through classified defense contracts and off-world mining operations, Kate replied. Every human colony contributed resources and personnel without knowing the full scope of what they were supporting. The secrecy was maintained through compartmentalization and need-to-know protocols. Admiral Frank Nelson studied the display with growing amazement and realized that his role as fleet commander had been largely ceremonial. The real military power of humanity had been hidden from almost everyone, including the people responsible for defending human space. The conventional fleet existed primarily to maintain the illusion that humanity was a minor military power. What capabilities do these ships possess? Frank asked. The Keth demonstrated weapons that could penetrate our best shields and destroy heavily fortified positions. Do we have the technology to match their firepower? Pete smiled for the first time since the meeting began and activated another section of the display. Technical specifications appeared showing weapon systems that seemed impossible, according to current understanding of physics. Quantum torpedoes that could phase through matter, reality warping shields that redirected enemy attacks, AI-controlled drone swarms that could learn and adapt during combat. Our ships don't just match Keth technology, Pete said with quiet confidence. They exceeded by several generations. We've had 40 years to study every piece of alien technology that entered human space. Our weapons were specifically designed to counter the most advanced threats we could imagine. President Baker stood up slowly and looked around the room at the faces of people who were just beginning to understand what humanity was truly capable of achieving. The massacre at New Haven Colony had been intended to demonstrate human weakness and force their retreat from the stars. Instead, it had awakened something that the galaxy had never seen before. The Keth Dominion believes they are dealing with helpless farmers, Helen said in a voice that carried the weight of absolute authority. They destroyed our people without warning because they thought we were too weak to retaliate. They made the worst mistake in their species' history. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. Humanity possessed the largest and most advanced military force in known space. The aliens who had murdered innocent civilians were about to discover that their victims were not the defenseless prey they appeared to be. Admiral Nelson, you will coordinate with General Thompson to begin activation of Project Leviathan, Helen ordered. I want every ship brought online and prepared for combat operations. The Keth Dominion wanted to show us their strength. Now we're going to show them ours. Admiral Bob Hayes stood in the command center buried 3 kilometers beneath the surface of Mars and watched as his screens came alive with activity. The Red Fleet activation had begun at exactly 600 hours Earth Standard Time, and the massive underground hangar bays were opening for the first time in 20 years. 150,000 destroyer-class vessels emerged from their hidden berths like sleeping giants awakening from a long dream. Each ship in Bob's command was sleek and deadly with hull plating that absorbed sensor sweeps and weapon arrays, designed to punch through the heaviest alien armor. The destroyers had been built specifically for hit-and-run tactics against larger enemy vessels. They could strike without warning and disappear before the enemy could respond effectively. Red Fleet vessels report ready for combat operations, announced Captain Linda Gray from her position at the tactical station. Linda had spent 15 years overseeing the maintenance of ships that she never thought would see actual combat. The destroyers had been kept in perfect condition by automated systems and occasional inspection. Crews who believed they were maintaining emergency reserves. Bob nodded and opened a secure communication channel to Earth Command. Red Fleet operational and awaiting orders. 150,000 vessels ready for immediate deployment. Estimated time to full combat readiness is 6 hours. Similar reports were coming in from secret bases throughout human space as the largest military mobilization in galactic history began to unfold. On Europa, Captain Sue Miller supervised the launch of humanity's heavy battle cruisers from shipyards hidden beneath the moon's ice crust. These massive vessels carried planet-cracking weapons capable of destroying entire worlds with single shots. Sue had always wondered why humanity needed such devastating firepower when their only enemies were pirates and smugglers. Now she understood that the ships had been designed for a very different kind of war. The battle cruisers were built to fight enemies who showed no mercy to human civilians and respected only overwhelming force. Blue Fleet Report 75,000 battle cruisers launching from Europa shipyards, Sue announced over the tactical network. All vessels equipped with quantum torpedo arrays and reality warping defensive systems were ready to turn some alien ships into scrap metal. Beyond the orbit of Pluto, Commander Jack Stone oversaw the most classified section of Project Leviathan. The Vengeance-class dreadnoughts represented the absolute pinnacle of human military technology. Each ship was over 5 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy entire enemy fleets. Only 50,000 dreadnoughts had been built, but they were designed to hunt down and eliminate any threat to human civilization. Jack walked through the command center of his flagship and marveled at the technology surrounding him. The ship's AI could process tactical data faster than any organic brain and coordinate attacks with thousands of other vessels simultaneously. The weapons systems could reach across solar systems to strike targets with pinpoint accuracy. Vengeance fleet ready for deployment, Jack reported to Earth Command. 50,000 dreadnoughts fully operational and armed with our most advanced weapons. These ships were built specifically to end wars quickly and permanently. Lieutenant Colonel Mary Johnson coordinated the mobilization from her station at Strategic Command and watched as reports flooded in from every corner of human space. Mining colonies were converting their ore haulers into missile platforms loaded with nuclear warheads. Research stations offered their prototype vessels equipped with experimental weapons that had never been tested in combat. The scale of participation was staggering as millions of humans who had lived peaceful lives suddenly revealed their true nature. Farmers became warriors overnight as they volunteered to crew the warships emerging from hidden bases. Scientists abandoned their laboratories to serve as tactical officers on vessels designed for total warfare. Colony Fleet reports 200,000 converted civilian vessels ready for combat operations, Mary announced. Mining ships, agricultural transports, and research vessels all armed and ready to fight. Every human settlement is contributing to the war effort. The transformation happening throughout human space would have shocked any alien observer who had studied human civilization. The peaceful farmers and scientists were revealing themselves to be something far more dangerous. Every human colony had been built with hidden military infrastructure that could be activated in times of crisis, Captain. Dan Williams led the advanced scout formation tasked with gathering intelligence on Keth positions throughout their territory. His ships were equipped with stealth technology that made them invisible to alien sensors. The scouts had been mapping Keith space for weeks while the main fleet prepared for deployment. Intelligence reports confirmed 12 major Keth military installations within their territory, Dan announced during the tactical briefing. Their total fleet strength appears to be approximately 80,000 vessels of various classes. They have no idea what's coming for them. The Keth Dominion remained completely unaware of the storm gathering in human space. Their intelligence networks had classified humanity as a minor species with limited military capability, focused on peaceful expansion and scientific research. They had observed only civilian vessels and light patrol craft during their surveillance of human territory. Keth military analysts had concluded that humanity's response to the New Haven attack would be diplomatic protests and possibly the evacuation of outer colonies. The idea that humans might possess significant military forces had been dismissed as impossible, given their peaceful behavior over decades of expansion. Commander Ryan Clark reviewed the final battle plans with his senior staff aboard the command ship Iron Justice. The human fleet would attack in coordinated waves designed to overwhelm Keth defenses before they could mount an effective response. The first wave would target communication networks and supply lines, while the main fleet moved into position for the final assault. Phase 1 begins in 72 hours, Ryan announced to the assembled fleet commanders. We hit their communication hubs first to prevent them from coordinating a defense. Phase 2 targets their supply lines to cut off reinforcements. Phase 3 is the direct assault on their homeworld with the full fleet. The human armada represented the largest concentration of military power in galactic history. 700,000 warships armed with weapons that pushed the boundaries of known physics. Ships crewed by humans who had spent their entire lives preparing for this moment, even if they didn't know it at the time. Admiral Frank Nelson stood on the bridge of the command ship Retribution and looked out at the assembled fleet stretching beyond the horizon. The sight filled him with both pride and sadness as he realized what humanity was truly capable of achieving when pushed to the brink of extinction. All fleets report ready for combat operations, Frank announced over the fleet communication system. The Keth Dominion wanted to show us their strength when they murdered our people at New Haven. Today we show them what happens when you threaten human civilians. Today we show them why Earth has remained unconquered for thousands of years. The greatest military force in galactic history began its advance toward Keth space carrying the fury of an entire species that had been pushed too far. The peaceful farmers and scientists were about to become something that would haunt alien nightmares for generations to come. Captain Dan Williams guided his stealth squadron through the outer edge of Keith space and prepared to deliver the opening strike of humanity's revenge campaign. His 12 scout ships had spent weeks mapping enemy positions and identifying critical targets throughout the Keith Dominion. The aliens had no idea that human vessels were already deep inside their territory, gathering intelligence for the coming storm. Dan's tactical display showed the locations of major Keth communication hubs and supply depots scattered across 17 star systems. The enemy had built their infrastructure assuming they faced no serious threats in this region of space. Their defensive positions were designed to handle raids from primitive species, not coordinated attacks from advanced military forces. All units report ready for simultaneous strike, announced Lieutenant Kelly Brown from her position at the weapons console. The quantum torpedoes loaded in their launch tubes represented technology that could phase through solid matter and detonate inside enemy installations. The Keth would have no warning before their communication networks disappeared in brilliant flashes of nuclear fire. Open the tactical channel to coordinate with the other strike teams positioned throughout Keth space. Phoenix leader to all units. Execute Operation Silence in 30 seconds. Target all primary communication nodes simultaneously. Show these aliens what happens when they mess with human civilians. The first wave of attacks began exactly on schedule as quantum torpedoes materialized inside Keth communication stations and supply depots across their territory. The weapons bypassed enemy shields and armor by phasing through normal matter until they reached their programmed detonation points. 17 major installations vanished in coordinated nuclear explosions that lit up the darkness of space. Keth military commanders tried desperately to coordinate a response, but found their communication networks completely severed. Individual fleet units received no orders from Central Command and had no way to contact each other for mutual support. The aliens had never encountered an enemy capable of such precise and devastating coordination. Admiral Carol Adams watched from the bridge of her flagship Vengeance as the main human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Keth home system. 700,000 warships emerged from the darkness in perfect formation, creating a wall of metal and weapons that stretched across the void. The sight would have been beautiful if not for the terrible purpose that brought them here. The Keth home fleet scrambled to respond to the massive human armada, but their numbers were pathetically small compared to what they faced. 80,000 alien vessels moved to intercept the human force, while emergency broadcasts tried to rally additional ships from across their territory. The Keth commanders still believed they were dealing with a primitive species that could be defeated through superior technology and tactics. Enemy fleet approaching. Maximum weapons range reported. Commander Lisa Parker from the tactical station. Their ships are larger than our intelligence estimates suggested, but they're still outnumbered by nearly 9-1. Shall we begin the engagement, Admiral? Carol nodded and opened the fleet communication channel to address the hundreds of thousands of human warriors preparing for battle. All ships, this is Admiral Adams. The aliens who destroyed New Haven Colony are about to learn why you don't threaten human families. These creatures showed no mercy to our people, so we will show none to them. Begin the attack. The human fleet opened fire with weapons that defied every known law of physics and turned space itself into a battlefield of impossible energies. Quantum torpedoes phased through Keth shields as if they didn't exist, while reality-warping technology redirected alien weapons back at their own ships. The enemy had never encountered anything like the storm of destruction that suddenly engulfed their formation. Keth vessels that had seemed invincible during the New Haven massacre found themselves helpless against human technology. Their energy weapons struck human ships only to have the attacks absorbed and converted into additional power for the defending vessels. Alien commanders watched in horror as their most powerful weapons actually made human ships stronger, instead of damaging them. Commander Ryan Clark led a squadron of heavy cruisers in a direct assault on the Keth flagship and demonstrated the terrifying efficiency of human military doctrine. Rather than simply destroying the enemy command ship, his vessels disabled its weapons and engines while keeping the crew alive inside their crippled vessel. The message was clear that humanity could have ended the battle in seconds, but chose to make it last longer. Keth flagship disabled and ready for boarding, Ryan announced over the tactical network. Their command crew is alive and watching their entire fleet get systematically destroyed. I think they're starting to understand that they picked the wrong species to mess with. The battle for the Keth homeworld lasted 6 hours and ended with the complete destruction or capture of every enemy vessel in the system. Human ships fought with coordination that seemed impossible, as AI systems shared tactical data instantaneously across the entire fleet. When Keth commanders tried new tactics, they found human vessels already adapting to counter their strategies before they could implement them. Captain Sue Miller commanded one of the battle groups tasked with securing Keth orbital installations, and was amazed by how easily alien defenses crumbled under human assault. The space stations that had seemed so threatening during intelligence briefings turned out to be built with inferior technology and poor defensive planning. Her quantum torpedoes punched through their armor like paper, while her shields absorbed their return fire without strain. All orbital defenses neutralized, Sue reported to the fleet command. The aliens built impressive-looking stations, but they're about as effective as cardboard boxes against our weapons. I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the planet's surface, though. Looks like they have some kind of defensive grid down there. The Keth planetary defense system activated as human ships approached their homeworld, but the alien weapons proved just as ineffective as their space fleet. Ground-based energy cannons fired powerful beams that simply vanished when they struck human reality-warping shields. The technology that had taken humanity 40 years to develop made them effectively immune to conventional weapons. General Kate Thompson coordinated the ground assault from her command ship and watched as human Marines landed on the Keth homeworld to secure critical installations. The aliens had never faced an enemy that could simply ignore their most powerful weapons while striking back with devastating precision. Keth ground forces surrendered in massive numbers as they realized their cause was hopeless. Planet secured, Admiral. Kate reported to Carol Adams. Keth military forces have ceased resistance and their government is requesting immediate surrender terms. Their leaders want to negotiate for the survival of their species. Carol looked out at the smoking ruins of the Keth fleet floating in space around their homeworld and felt no satisfaction in the victory. The aliens had brought this destruction upon themselves when they chose to murder innocent human civilians. The battle had demonstrated that humanity possessed military power beyond anything the galaxy had seen before, but it had come at the cost of showing the universe what humans were truly capable of when pushed too far. There will be no negotiations, Carol announced over the fleet communication system. The Keth Dominion chose to wage war against civilians, so they will face the consequences of that decision. Their military forces will be dismantled and their species will be relocated under human supervision. The galaxy needs to understand what happens when you threaten human families. Ambassador Tony Green stepped into the great assembly hall of the Galactic Council and felt the weight of 1,000 alien eyes watching his every movement. Representatives from dozens of species sat in their assigned seats while holographic displays showed the smoking ruins of the former Keth Dominion. The galaxy had watched in stunned silence as humanity systematically dismantled an entire interstellar empire in less than 2 weeks of fighting. The council chambers had been built to accommodate the most powerful civilizations in known space, but today they felt small and fragile in the presence of Earth's representative. Tony carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who knew his species now commanded the largest military force in galactic history. The peaceful farmers and scientists who had seemed so harmless just months ago had revealed themselves to be the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever seen. Council Speaker Zara Vex of the Altarian Republic called the emergency session to order with obvious nervousness in her voice. The Altarians had been the dominant military power in this region of space for over 3 centuries, but their entire fleet contained fewer ships than humanity had deployed against the Keth. Every species in the chamber was struggling to understand how they had so completely misjudged human capabilities. The Galactic Council recognizes Ambassador Green of the Terran Federation, Zara announced. The Council requests an explanation for the unprovoked destruction of the Keth Dominion and the deployment of military forces far exceeding any previous intelligence estimates. Tony smiled politely and activated the holographic display at his podium. Images appeared showing the orbital bombardment of New Haven Colony and the systematic murder of nearly 3 million human civilians. The alien representatives shifted uncomfortably as they watched the footage of families being incinerated by Keth energy, weapons without warning or mercy. Honorable representatives, there was nothing unprovoked about humanity's response to Keth aggression, Tony replied in a calm voice that carried clearly through the chamber. The Keth Dominion chose to wage war against innocent civilians, and they received exactly the response such actions deserve. My government's message to the galaxy is simple. Humanity seeks peace and cooperation with all species, but we will respond to attacks on our people with overwhelming and permanent retaliation. The Centauri delegate raised his hand for recognition and stood slowly from his seat. Ambassador Rex Cortez had been one of the first aliens to establish diplomatic relations with humanity over 40 years ago. He had always viewed humans as a minor species useful for trade, but lacking significant military power. The revelation of Project Leviathan had shattered everything he thought he knew about Earth's capabilities. Ambassador Green, the Centauri Republic, has maintained peaceful relations with humanity since first contact, Rex said carefully. However, we are concerned by the scale of military forces your species has deployed. 700,000 warships represents a threat to the stability of this entire region of space. What assurances can you provide that humanity will not use this power for territorial expansion? Tony's smile never wavered as he looked around the chamber at the faces of species who had dismissed humanity as harmless for decades. The irony was not lost on him that the same aliens who had ignored human diplomatic overtures were now demanding reassurances about human intentions. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted permanently, and everyone knew it. The Terran Federation has no interest in conquest or territorial expansion, Tony replied. We are content with our current borders and seek only to protect our people from those who would do them harm. However, any species that chooses to attack human civilians will discover that we possess both the will and the capability to end their existence as a spacefaring civilization. Captain Nancy Parker stood on the bridge of her patrol cruiser Guardian and watched as human warships took up permanent positions throughout known space. The fleet that had destroyed the Keth was not returning to hidden bases as many aliens had hoped. Instead, the 700,000 vessels were establishing patrol routes that would ensure no species could mistake human restraint for weakness ever again. Nancy's ship was part of the new Deep Space Patrol network that extended human military presence to every corner of the galaxy. Her crew included former civilians who had volunteered for military service after learning about the New Haven massacre. Teachers and farmers and scientists had become warriors overnight when they realized their peaceful way of life required protection from hostile species. Long-range sensors detect 3 Vaxxan military vessels approaching the Kepler system, reported Lieutenant Scott Davis from his position at the tactical station. They appear to be conducting reconnaissance of our colony installations. Nancy nodded and opened a communication channel to the alien ships. The Vaxxan Empire had been testing human resolve ever since the destruction of the Keth by sending scout vessels near human territory. Several species seemed to believe that humanity's military power was exaggerated and that they could probe for weaknesses without consequences. Vaxxan vessels, this is Captain Parker of the Terran Federation Navy, Nancy announced. You are approaching human space without authorization. Turn back immediately or you will be classified as hostile and dealt with accordingly. The alien response came quickly in accented English. Human vessel, we are conducting legitimate navigation exercises in neutral space. The Vaxxan Empire does not recognize your authority in this region. Nancy smiled grimly and activated her ship's weapon systems. The Guardian was one of the smaller vessels in the human fleet, but it carried enough firepower to destroy entire enemy squadrons. The aliens were about to receive a practical demonstration of why testing human patience was a very bad idea. Vaxxan Commander, you have 10 seconds to reverse course and leave this area. Nancy replied coldly. Refuse and you will discover why the Keth Dominion no longer exists. The alien ships immediately changed course and retreated at maximum speed toward their own territory. Word of the encounter would spread quickly through alien diplomatic channels and serve as another reminder that humanity's peaceful nature should not be mistaken for weakness. Commander Paul Davis supervised the construction of memorial stations at the site of New Haven Colony while human engineers worked to build something beautiful from the ashes of tragedy. The dead world had become a monument to the nearly 3 million civilians who died there, surrounded by an eternal guard of human warships that would ensure their sacrifice was never forgotten. Paul walked through the observation deck of Memorial Station Alpha and looked down at the planet that had once been covered with golden wheat, fields, and happy families. The world was slowly healing as terraforming equipment restored the atmosphere and began the long process of bringing life back to the scarred surface. Construction teams report. Memorial Station Beta will be operational within the week, announced Chief Engineer Mike Turner. We'll have a complete defensive network around the system by the end of the month. Nothing will ever threaten this place again. The Memorial Station served multiple purposes as both monuments to the dead and demonstrations of human resolve. Any species that visited the New Haven system would see the massive defensive installations and understand that humanity took the protection of their people very seriously. The peaceful farmers who had died here had been avenged, but their memory would serve as a warning to future generations. Jake Morrison's final transmission played continuously from speakers throughout the memorial stations. His words had become humanity's creed and a promise to every human family living among the stars. We are farmers and scientists and explorers, the recording said. But when you attack our families, you will discover that we are also the most dangerous predators this galaxy has ever known. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength was not their advanced technology or massive fleets. It was their absolute refusal to forgive those who targeted innocent people and their willingness to sacrifice everything to protect their own. The peaceful species that had seemed so harmless had revealed themselves to be something that alien nightmares were made of when pushed beyond their limits.